There's a lot of celebration at Disney over the fact that Moana 2, after its second weekend, has an estimate right now to cross the $600 million global threshold from the box office. But, of course, as usual, the devil is in the details. And that devil might be something that Disney doesn't want to talk about right now because it's not as rosy as it looks. Let me tell you why. We got to talk about something that I indicated on the Wednesday live show. Moana seemed to be slipping. It was not performing that well after its opening weekend. It really, really wasn't. And I was surprised at how much the drop-off was. I was not thinking... I had my suspicions that it was going to be potentially not good. I didn't think it would be egregious, but it was. And we talked about that on the Wednesday show. All right, now we look at these numbers, okay, from the numbers, and you say $600 million. Wow, it's doing great. It is. I want everybody to understand what I'm about to say here. There's no denying the fact that this movie has thus far been a big hit, okay? No doubt. There's no reason to expect the Walt Disney Company to lose money on this. However, there is more to the story that the rest of the mainstream media is going to ignore, or they're frankly too dumb to realize, which is more often than not problematic. That tends to be what we see typically. And it would not in the least surprise me. So let's get down to it. Let me show you what I was talking about on Wednesday here. Okay, let's go down here to the box office. I want to show you the day-to-day because this is what's key. Moana 2, and if you recall, this is a big follow-up to a huge success, a revitalized success for the Walt Disney Company. From a movie that was released 7-8 years ago now, whatever it was. The first Moana movie. They headlined it and kind of did a re-release kind of thing, re-promotion on Disney+, and it became the most watched or the most consumed in terms of minutes or hours on a streaming service as a movie throughout, I think, all of 2023, which was huge for Disney. And it just kind of went to prove that Disney doesn't have to sink billions and billions and billions of dollars creating original content for Disney Plus that most of the time these days absolutely suck. They're terrible products. Disney is not a creative company anymore. They are not good storytellers. We have covered this. It is inarguable at this point. And I'm going to show you why, because we have a new article from Caroline Reed that we're going to talk about here in just a bit. Okay? Or if you're watching this as a clip, it'll be in a subsequent video, so stay tuned. Look at Moana, however, all right? Look at that opening week, right? It opened on a Tuesday before Thanksgiving, $13.8 million. That was lumped into the $57 million, which was the official opening Wednesday. Huge opening day. $27 million on Thanksgiving Day. Then it had a banger of a weekend, stretching out all the way to $225 million. So through the end of November, $190 million. And then you pick up that December 1st, that Sunday, the first Sunday it was open. Look at the next day. And this is what I talked about Wednesday, December 2nd, the first Monday. Now, yeah, the kids went back to school. But, dear God almighty, an 83% drop from the previous day. That's bonkers. And we showed you, comparably, how the other two big films in the box office had a lesser drop, a decent bit lesser drop. I mean, not 40%, but I mean, it wasn't 80 plus. And that was Wicked and Gladiator 2. It popped up on a Tuesday because those are discount days. No surprise there. But you look at the next day, Wednesday, 45% down from the Tuesday. It didn't even tread water with the Monday. 92% down over the previous week. Now, again, obviously, the previous Wednesday was opening day with a big roll-in of 13.8 million from the preview night. So you got Tuesday night or Tuesday during the day and Wednesday. It was almost 2 days. Still a 92% drop from that previous week. That's harsh. 85% drop from the previous week. And again, the previous week, that was Thanksgiving Day on a Thursday. People go see movies generally when it comes to Thanksgiving. They're going to see movies in the evening. Thanksgiving during the day is usually not that huge, but that was a big Thanksgiving Day for Moana. Huge drop there. So coming into this weekend, then we got the Friday numbers, down 78% from the previous Friday. Down 54% from the previous Saturday, 51% from the previous Sunday, that Sunday is today versus last Sunday. Okay. Granted, these are estimates. That's why they're in green. These are estimates for the weekend. We don't get official numbers until usually sometime Monday afternoon, maybe Tuesday morning, depending on the reporting. Given the trend line of this, I think many people out there in the audience already know what I'm about to say. Given the trend line here, I suspect that these estimates for the second weekend are going to be high. And I'm not saying that, it's going to be off by 20, 30%, but it's going to be off by a few percent, maybe 3, 4, 5%. I want you to look at the weekend box office performance. It's down 63% weekend over weekend. That's a fairly harsh drop. It's not as harsh as some of the things that we've seen from some of the Marvel Studios disasters of the last few years, but that's still pretty wicked, no pun intended. And to make my point, speaking of, let's show you Wicked, okay? Wicked had a weekend of 34 million. This is the third weekend for Wicked. Look at that second weekend drop for Wicked. And granted, the second weekend for Wicked was actually Thanksgiving. A 28% hold from the first to the second weekend. That's super strong, okay? And I'm not even that enamored with what Wicked's doing financially out there. I realize a lot of people like the movie, and that's cool. But I'm not even that enamored with the financials of it. Look at this weekend, a 57% hold from the second to the third. 57%. Y'all have heard me say before, if a movie holds within the 50%, 50 to 59% range, 50 to 60% range from first to second weekend, that's pretty decent. It's not great, but it's decent. It's respectable. A 28% hold is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But you go back and you look here, and we're going back over here to Moana 2. 63% drop. Wicked lost 28% into the second weekend. Moana lost 63%. Even accounting for that Thanksgiving Day weekend, that's a pretty big kick in the nards. And Moana has about 400 or some odd more screens, 300 to 400 more screens than Wicked does. And we talked about the reason why before, and that is this, okay? Moana 2 here with the RT score. And I realize the audience score is really high, or decently high. It's 87%. But you look in here at the critic score, top critics at 60%. You are on the edge of going rotten with critics with this movie. 59% would be the green, rotten, splatty tomato. All critics at 62, top critics at 60. And that's right there. I think the biggest problem this movie has is the fact that people are not getting into it in the same way as they did the first one that then became a big hit again on Disney+. Kids are maybe there's some more repeat viewing in the next couple of weeks, but that's a pretty hard fall off. We're talking about a 5-day open that was 225 million right there. Okay. The first Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of which was about 140 million, and that 140 million went down to 52. I would have liked to have seen that hold up closer to, say, 70 million, right around 50%. Even 65 million, but no. And everything that happened during the week here, 5 million, 8 million, 4 million, 4 million, that is a hell of a hard drop from an open like that. That means, in other words, that most of the people that wanted to see this movie ran in the opening weekend, and that pretty much was it. Okay? Now, it's still going to grow. And what's impressive about this movie is that it looks like it has roughly the same domestic haul as it does international. So that's quite a feat. It really, really is. Quite a feat. You know, that's good for the movie because they probably spent at least $300 million on this sucker between production and marketing, perhaps more, perhaps 350. It's just what Disney does. We don't have any good data out there. The only thing I saw was from Screen Rant estimating that production costs were 150. But like I've said before, we all know how bad Screen Rant is at pretty much everything, especially reporting. But that being said, let's say the movie is real close to break even right now. But you look at the trend line during the week, it just flattens out. It falls under that middle curve. And it's come back up a little bit because the weekend has held it. But if we're talking about another 60% drop next weekend, okay, for this movie, then we're going to go from 52 million to maybe, what, 20 million? 25 million? I mean, if it comes in with 25 million, that's a 50% hold, which would be pretty decent. I don't think it's going to do that. If it drops 63% the first weekend, I don't see it hanging on 50% from second to third. So, and you consider how weak, absolutely weak sauce the weekday performance is for this film. I don't know how much this film has left in the tank. And I want to remind everybody, this was a movie that myself included with the Walt Disney Company suspected should be a fairly easy billion-dollar flick. This movie should cross $1 billion globally. I think right now that being able to happen is the chances of it actually occurring have likely shrunk significantly in the last 7 days. There's still an outside chance it could. But I think right now, looking at this, I think it'll be darn lucky to get there. And again, Disney didn't put this in the theater not to be a huge banger for them. And again, they'll make money, they'll cover their costs unless there's some big surprise. But it goes to show you, and this is the bottom line, once the audience, the big audience, huge audience that binge watched this movie on Disney Plus through 2023 over and 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 over, they went to go see this one, and they apparently, maybe they weren't that impressed. And that's what we've been hearing from a lot of folks that have seen it. Visually, stunning. Story-wise, lacking. Musically, forgettable. And the music is what sells these kind of things for Disney. And it ain't happening here. Let me show you Moana 2 that we just had up. And now let me show you what Disney was hoping for, somewhat at least, of a repeat of. All right, here we go. Moana 2 versus Inside Out 2. All right, let me show you something here. Let's go down to the total figures. All right. Almost $1.7 billion for Inside Out 2. Massive. But what I want you to pay attention to in particular is the international box office. This is where Moana is woefully behind and highly unlikely to catch up. $1 billion in international box office for Inside Out 2. Humongous. $1 billion just in international. Right now, I don't even know if Moana 2 is going to break $1 billion over the whole planet. I'm having my serious doubts right now. 300 million domestic. Maybe they have another 150 million in the tank right now, based on the trends during the week and the roll-off from weekend 1 to weekend 2. That might even be generous. International, there's no way it's going 3x from here. 3.3x, as a matter of fact, here after 10 days. Where's that going? So And I'm not trying to say that Moana 2 has to become Inside Out 2 to be successful. I'm making that clear. I want to be fair. But my point is, Inside Out 2 is a film that Disney wanted to do a follow-up on because they knew the popularity of the first one. The first Inside Out film wasn't a huge thing on Disney Plus within the last 12 months. The first Moana movie was. So in theory, Moana 2, you could argue, should have done, under those circumstances, even better than Inside Out 2 did. But at least relatively close. As of right now, there's nothing indicating that Moana 2 is going to finish anywhere near Inside Out 2. The idea that Disney, rather, has gotten out of the box office doldrums, we need to ease back on that one. We need to ease back on that one hard. Hard, guys.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.